Hey guys, Angry Beast here bringing you some Domination gameplay on the map Seelow using the Mosin-Nagant no-scoped, pretty much the same class as I used before. I believe I have the bouncing betties on with stopping power and martyrdom, and this is how I like to use the Mosin-Nagant. I think it benefits very greatly from having the betties if you can remember to place them down, because you're generally going to be playing a defensive style when using a bolt action rifle. There really isn't too many ways around it. If you want to play aggressive with a weapon, use a submachine gun or a rifle. But in this gameplay, I want to talk about the tanks as I jump into one right here. And these were one of the things that made this game unique. The tanks were something that never came back in any other Call of Duty, and it's my assumption that they're going to at least return in a small amount in Black Ops 2. From what I've seen in the trailer, they're really pushing that claw tank thing, whatever that thing actually is called, but they call it the CLAW, the claw. And I'm expecting that to make an appearance in multiplayer, maybe as a kill streak, maybe it's just something you scatter across the map like this. And I just think it'd add a really cool dynamic to the game, because when you use the tanks in this game, they were not all powerful. If you knew how to take them out, they could be taken out by one person using fireworks and the satchel charges and the N74 ST grenades. But however, if you were against a team of people who didn't know how to use them, and you could absolutely dominate with them. I do that later in the game. I pick up like a 10 kill streak in a tank or something, and it's easy enough to do that even the bad players have fun with them. The only thing you have to make sure you do when you have a tank map is make sure you have a tank class that can destroy tanks. Generally speaking, you want fireworks and the satchel charges, because those are two of the most effective things against it. Fireworks plus the satchel charge means you can destroy a tank, and I believe 2 satchel charges if you throw them right underneath it, and that's very powerful. And you combine that with the N74 ST, then you can have a very, very, very powerful anti-tank class. Generally speaking, I run my anti-tank classes with the pump-action shotgun. But in all reality, that weapon is not the best to use with fireworks. You want stopping power and steady aim on that. So you probably end up wanting to use something like a STG-44, because that just gives you a good balance of firepower and movement, which you need when you're trying to take out the tanks. Because if you're a slow-moving light machine gunner, you're not going to be very effective against taking out the tanks. But when you are in the tanks, it's a different story. One of the most important things you can do while you're inside a tank is to remember to switch your positions. When you're in the big gun, you have to remember that you're not effective against infantry as much so as you would be if you used a light machine gun. I think that's one of the things that people messed up with the tanks in this game, is that they didn't realize that there was a second gunner seat you could jump into and have a machine gun for anti-personnel use. It's one of the most important skills you can have, is learning when to switch seats in the tank, because there's nothing else that really teaches you how to do that. There's no kill streak to let you switch. Well, the closest thing is probably the AC-130. You use the big tanks for, the big guns for clusters of enemies, and you'd use the smaller guns for single enemies on their own. And that's what you have to learn to do. Similar thing with the tanks, because they give you that dynamic that allows you to be very effective against clusters of enemy, but it has a really long reload time. Or you got a machine gun, which has a really short cooldown time. I think I'll hop in the tank in just a second here. When you do hop in the tank, you have to be careful that you're not sniped as soon as you jump in the tank, because that's what a lot of people do. They'll sit there waiting for you to hop in the tank because they feel like they can get a lot of kills just sitting there watching you trying to jump into the tank. And I'm not gonna lie, it is a successful strategy, and it can work out. And another thing you have to worry about is when you jump into the tank and you go into the gunner seat, you have to make sure that you're not, double kill, but you have to make sure you're not sniped off, because you have a very ripe headshot spot when you're using the tank, and if you're in the gunner seat. So I just feel like that you have to learn when to duck in the gunner seat. A lot of people don't know this, but if you use your crouch button while you're in a tank gunner seat like this, you can actually crouch while in the tank, and it's a very useful strategy. You can also aim down sights in the tank, which I've actually never seen many other people do, but it's a useful strategy because it allows you to get those longer range shots. When you're in the tanks, I think one of the things that's most important, if you're going for a tank-only strategy, is fireworks. Like I said before, fireworks in a tank will literally destroy people. It's like using Danger Close on an AC-130 or a chopper gunner. It just destroys people because it just gives it such a high blast radius, and not many people run flak jack in this game. It's just how it works, and it ends up being you have a very, very powerful anti-tank weapon, and you have a very, very powerful anti-personnel weapon, because the best thing to take out the tanks in all reality is the tanks. They do more damage against each other than any other explosive in the game. The bazooka is up there as well, but I generally say the bazooka is not as good as a tank, simply because it takes a really long time to reload, and you're moving really slow when you have it out. and you don't have the advantage of the armor that you do while you're in a tank. Fortunately, I get grenaded out of there, and that's what happens. That's how you take out a tank. You just throw grenade after grenade at it. But the best way really is tanks and satchel charges. For whatever reason, the satchel charges are extremely effective against the tanks, and they're probably the #1 thing that's used to take out tanks in this game. The frags are useful, but I don't say that they're as good as, say, the satchel charge or whatnot. And it just ends up being that you just want to use a tank to take out the tanks. It's as simple as that. But when you're using a gun like the Mosin-Nagant on a map like Seelow, there really isn't too much to say. I mean, the Mosin-Nagant's made for a map like this. It's a huge map that's really long range, and you can really dominate people with it. I mean, just sit back a little bit and wait for them to come to you. And you can sit in a high traffic area like this, and you can just build up your kill streaks really easily. Spots like this are very common in Domination or War setup, where you can be indoors and have good lines of sight outside. I have another match with the Springfield on this map where I just literally sit on top of a wall all the time and aim out sight right in their spawn in a war match. Unfortunately, that doesn't always work. I mean, the spawns in war are a little bit sporadic, but you know, it can work. I mean, it's really easy to spawn trap on this map. This is one of those maps that if you can get them into a C or an A lock, it's very difficult for them to get out, because they'll only spawn in that back corner because there's just so much space on the map. You sit with a rifle or a sniper, and you can just sit there and pick them off as they try to run towards you out of their spawn. One of the things that this map is notorious for, though, is the bridge up top. There's a lot of people who will just sit up in the bridge the entire time of the match, and I don't think that's a very good strategy, even in a team deathmatch, because the bridge, generally speaking, doesn't give you much advantage over being below. And one thing that this map really didn't do for Domination is it didn't give a purpose for this whole right side of the map. I mean, the map goes way far back there to the right over here, and it just extends a really large distance, and I think that it really should have done something in Domination to make it so that it expand the entire map, but there's a reason they did it. I mean, it keeps it a little bit faster paced, but occasionally have the sniper on one of the towers in the far back of the map, which can be frustrating because then you have to go out of your way to get to them, and they'll probably end up sniping you again on your way to get them. So generally speaking, just avoid the bridge area or anything to the left of the bridge in Domination, because, you know, it just doesn't end up being a good idea. Trying to play on the side of the map where there's less action, while it's good for building up a kill streak because you only generally have serial engagements, it's bad for trying to win the game, and it's not what I recommend doing in any situation. I pick up an FG42 here, and I really haven't used the FG42 much, but I really enjoy using it. It's a weapon that has a good rate of fire and good damage. I think is very comparable to the FAMAS with the 20-round magazine. I've heard a lot of people talking about the Black Ops FAMAS recently on websites like Den Kerson's forums, and one of the things that I've noticed is that people are saying the FAMAS would have been completely balanced if it had a lower magazine size, because they compare it to the Scar H. In Modern Warfare 2, you had the Scar H, which did the highest damage of all the assault rifles, with very good accuracy and a pretty good rate of fire, and it was balanced by the fact that it had a low magazine capacity and no way to be reload canceled. And I think that's an interesting idea. I think the FAMAS might have actually been balanced if they'd only given it a 20-round mag. But the gameplay is winding down. Pick up a nice final snipe there, and the score ends up being a 21-9. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'm Angry Beat.